Another acronym related to physical security is CCT. This is not a networking protocol, it's just closed circuit television systems for monitoring. It's important to note that monitoring, just watching video, is completely passive. And the networking part of me wants to say it's the difference between error detection and error correction. You can detect if somebody is where they're not supposed to be, but you can't actually prevent them from doing it, at least not through a CCT system. The best example of kind of hacking into a CCT system is in Ocean's 11, certainly. Great movie about security. Aside from video detection, there are other types. And of course, the problem with video detection is you have to pay a human being to constantly watch the video feed or video feeds, multiple, throughout the building. And so wouldn't it be better if just an alarm goes off if something bad happens instead of paying somebody to sit there and do nothing? And so that's the point of having motion detectors, thermal detectors, glass breakage detectors, weight sensors, contact centers, all of which are clearly demonstrated in another great movie, Mission Impossible. And we really need to be careful about not just the main data center, but wiring closets. So, for example, there are wiring closets on every floor of Founders Hall that are completely locked so that you can never get into them. They're right by the men's room. So, in case somebody happened to leave the door wide open and I took a couple of pictures because I'm nosy to see what the wiring closet looked like. You can see in here the phone lines. All the blue is Cat 5 cable running between floors. There's also, you'll remember from 468, anything orange is going to be a fiber optic multimode cable. We don't use fiber to go faster. We use it to cover greater distance. So the fiber probably goes between buildings. Just an example of getting into some place you really shouldn't get into. My question for you is, would you really stop this person and ask to see their identification? It's tricky. I would say this is where it's a good idea to get to know the cleaning people by name, and not just because it's the friendly thing to do and it's the decent thing to get to know all the people that provide services to you. Melody, who comes into my office to take out the trash, I have a good relationship with her. I buy peanut brittle from her church. We know each other by name. We recognize each other. I'm completely comfortable her having a key to my office. When she went out on medical leave, I introduced myself to the guy who was temporarily taking her place, because it's important to know these people. And it's if you just ignore people like this and don't pay attention to them, well, you're being a dick. I don't have the Kevin Mitnick book with me here at home to wave in front of you and read off some passages, but of course, Mitnick says, people are the weakest link, and of course, the way he was able to get around a lot of securities is putting on a uniform, sometimes even just putting on a fake badge, a fake name tag, anything that looks official. If you walk in the front door of the corporate office and tell security that you're there to check the air conditioning system, if they're amateurs, they're going to wave you on through, but hopefully they're going to ask to see more ID and that you've made an appointment and whatnot. But cleaning people, especially if you come in like I'm here to mop the floors, who's really going to stop you? We've talked about doors and getting through locks on doors, but the other piece of the puzzle is the walls that the doors are in. And just because you have walls around your computer room, don't think that it's absolutely secure, because if we're in the classroom, I could point out that, well, we know the walls between 3208 and 3207 are very thin, right? Because we can hear each other. But aside from that, if the door is locked, how hard is it to get from 3208 into 3207? Not hard at all. Just put a desk by the wall, crawl up, punch out the ceiling tile, and whoop, over to the other side. The The type of wall you can't do that with is a firewall. And when I say firewall, I don't mean the networking firewall. I mean the building code firewall. It's a wall. Every other wall is supposed to be a firewall so that in the event of fire, it's not going to just blaze all the way through. It's going to get stopped. And so a firewall goes all the way down and all the way up, which will stop people from, going up and over the wall. What is the number one physical threat? By far, the number one physical threat is fire. It does terrible things to electronics, and it's not so good on people either. So number one, you have to pay attention to human safety has got to be paramount. But of course, we're also responsible for preserving information as security professionals. And so physical threats like fire, of course, flood, tornado, hurricane, snow, ice, swarm of bees, these are all physical threats. But in terms of statistical likelihood, fire is really up there. It is number one. Well, we know the number one problem is fire, so we have to figure out how to deal with fire. The knee-jerk reaction is, well, we can pour water on fire. That puts out a fire. The problem with water is it's very bad for computers. So instead of water, we can use halon. Halon puts out a fire, and it's great for computer equipment because it just takes all the oxygen out and kills the fire and does not damage hard drives or anything that's spinning. The problem with halon is it's illegal because it's really terrible for human beings, toxic and all that. So the solution now is to use other gaseous agents. Halon is like trademark halon. It's illegal to use halon, however, it has been grandfathered in. So if you still have a fire suppression system using halon, you don't necessarily have to swap it out. But if it ever goes out and you have to do maintenance, you have to upgrade to a different gaseous agent. Other gaseous agents don't work as well as halon, so it is kind of a trade-off. Let's see one in action. Watch a little demo here.
One nozzle on over here, but you're taking the right reading. You should also have one more nozzle down in this area. Okay, everybody ready? Need pliers or something? I'm all set. Okay.
Least. Later, the fire is out.
Needless to say, you don't want to get caught in that.
You ready, guys? Here we go.
Well, that's not quite the video I wanted. Somewhere I've got a link to a video where there's a woman sitting in an office when the halon discharge goes off, and it's amusing. And actually, it couldn't be halon because she'd be dead. But here's the way I was trained on halon, because this was in the 90s and we had a halon system at the data center at Corning, actually the computer room. My training was one of the old timers saying, if you ever hear all the shutters in the ceiling whap, 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 close very quickly. It'll be very loud. It's like he said, here's your training. Get out. Get out quickly, because what's going to happen is it's going to lock the door, release the halon, which is going to suck all the oxygen out of the room to get rid of a fire. And of course, humans need oxygen to live. I was never caught in it. I heard it go off one time. It's very loud. So in the video, you can see when any chemical like that discharges, it's under a high amount of pressure. So it's not the kind of thing that's easy to test out, for example. Okay. Something, sadly, you would have to keep in mind if you're responsible for information security, and remember that's a blend of general management security and IT security. So information security, we have to worry about both. In the event of a fire or fire drill, maybe you have to have somebody that hangs back to check out, be a hall monitor to make sure nobody was, pulled the fire alarm so that they could slip into an office to steal something. It's sad, but you have to think about that, because that'd be an easy way to, get everybody out of a building while you go in to steal something. There are other things besides fire that we need to worry about, especially for our IT equipment, servers and switches and routers and firewalls and PCs and such. One is operating temperature. So number one, you don't want to let a computer room get too hot, because they have to be temperature controlled. Data centers have to be kept cool because the servers themselves are putting out an awful lot of heat. But in addition to temperature, you have to watch condensation resulting from humidity. So if humidity levels are too high, you're going to get condensation, which means liquid, and liquid is bad for electronics. At the same time, if the humidity is too low in your computer room or throughout the building, if it's too low, it's too easy to generate static electricity. And if you're thinking static electricity isn't enough to damage equipment, you're wrong, because you can actually generate 12,000 volts, a max of 12,000 volts from static. So if you're a hardware tech and you're opening up PCs, you really need to be in the habit of using a wrist strap. A wrist strap is one of these things that you clip to something that's grounded, and the other there's like a little metal piece that's touching your skin that's going to get rid of static, because you can very easily zot a RAM chip, a processor, inside of a printer. It's easy to render them useless, because too much electricity is bad for electronics as well. One tip though, the way a wrist strap works is it has to ground you. So if you just clip it to the case, but the case isn't grounded, it does no good. You are not grounded. So really the best way to ground the case is to plug the AC adapter into the back. So you've got the 3 prongs with the ground on the bottom. That's what's going to ground the PC, so that now you're grounded. Same thing with the printer, same thing with a server. So just clipping to the case doesn't necessarily ground you. Let's see, we said you can generate up to 12,000 volts just yourself of static electricity. So all it takes is 40 volts to do damage to a motherboard. Some interesting numbers here. May jam printers. I'm not sure how, but sure, why not? Something that's not a real problem is ventilation shafts. So I keep making references to Hollywood movies, but of course in every movie, TV show having to do with security or even video games, people are sneaking through ventilation shafts all the time, especially if you're playing Half-Life. But typically ventilation shafts are not big enough for human beings to crawl through, maybe if you're a child or something, nor are they strong enough to hold people. So while this may be something you want to take a look at when you're first designing a building, it's not nearly as big a problem as you would think based on movies. What is more of a problem is power conditioning, and this is not as glamorous or as sexy as crawling through a ventilation shaft, but this is just the day-to-day operational part of protecting your data center. So every outlet that you use has to be a three-prong, so that it is grounded. This is a good thing to keep in your toolkit, even if you've got like a networking toolkit just for testing power, where you plug it in and it'll light up and let you know if the ground is working correctly or not. It is possible to have an outlet with the three-prong and there's nothing on the other side to ground it, because it was hooked up incorrectly. So you do need to make sure that all your servers and network gear are properly grounded. The last thing you want to do is use one of these stupid things, because what does this do? This removes the ground. So you don't want to be using two-prong plugs. Power conditioning is one of those things that you wouldn't think you'd be worried about so much in information security, but this was always a problem for me. Worried about some elderly lady in customer service is going to plug in a heater because her feet are cold, and it's going to overload the circuit. Everything goes down. One way to help with this is to install GFCI outlets everywhere. GFCI is something like this, where you've got a fuse in the outlet so that you can it'll blow the fuse and not blow the circuit, is my understanding of how it works. And then you can reset it if it just pops out. But this can prevent a lot of damage to computer gear. Also, having a policy of not letting people plug in heaters at their cubicle. Now, especially here, you will see special orange outlets from time to time, and the way this is supposed to work is, if you ever see an orange outlet, you're really not supposed to use it. An orange outlet means it's plugged into a battery backup system. So only expensive computer gear should be plugged into an orange outlet that's connected to a battery backup. You shouldn't be plugging in fans or just PCs or anything, or anything like that into an orange outlet, because these are much more expensive because they're connected to a battery backup. But you should have lots of these in your actual data center. Other power considerations for your data center. So those orange outlets are going to be plugged into a battery backup system like this. They just look like big, giant car batteries, just rows and rows of car batteries. So at Charter's location, their head end where I co-load all my servers, when I say co-load, I mean co-located, co-load all my servers, they had just entire rooms of these battery backups. So, but that's only good for a couple of minutes. And double conversion online UPS kicks in immediately. Dirty versus clean power. If you just plug straight into an outlet, you're getting dirty power from the power company. And by dirty power, I mean there's little fluctuations. Not enough to cause a blackout, probably not enough to cause a brownout, but the power is irregular. Well, you want clean power, just a very clean signal. The best way to get clean power is to run the circuit from your power company to charge all the battery backups, all the batteries, and then your batteries are what are providing power to all of your server equipment in racks. So they're getting clean power. The only way to get clean power is from a battery. But these are only good for a few minutes. If you lose power for an extended period of time, you have to have a generator in place. It's going to be run off diesel fuel or some kind of fuel, probably diesel. If you're wondering if Founders Hall has a generator, yes, we do. If you walk outside to where that rainbow art is and take a right back where everybody used to smoke, that's where the generator is. Funny story about generators, they don't work well if you don't keep them full of fuel. So at Corning one time, we had an ice storm, power went out, the battery backups kicked in finally, everything came back on, and then the battery backups died because we didn't, the battery backups just didn't kick in immediately. And then everything came back up because the generator kicked in. And then 5 minutes later, power went back down because due to budget constraints, we had not purchased diesel fuel for that winter. Oops.